Time is the biggest enemy of all, and there is no greater example of this than professional wrestling. Time doesn't just affect a wrestler's body, it changes how we remember them. Unlike other sports or forms of entertainment, wrestling is unforgiving. One mistake or one match can undo years of a wrestler's legacy. Just look at Shaquille O'Neal. No one thinks about his final years in the NBA, where injuries piled up, he switched multiple teams, and the dominance faded. Instead, we remember the Shaq who revolutionized the center position and won championships. The same can be said for Marlon Brando. We remember The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Last Tango in Paris. People don't talk about the close to 20 films where he might have been one of the worst actors of all time. Professional wrestling isn't quite the same. You could be one of the greats, but one mistake, one match, one storyline, and people will ridicule you for years. Take Shawn Michaels for instance. He is widely considered one of the greatest of all time for many, but his legacy took a hit when he returned for Crown Jewel. Now, I'm not saying Shawn Michaels isn't the greatest of all time anymore because of this. Like I said, it was just one mistake in an otherwise perfect career. But what happens when it's not just one mistake? What if it's a series of missteps, a string of matches or decisions that consistently chip away at the legacy of a legend? When does the damage become irreparable? Today we're talking about just that. Today we're talking about Chris Jericho.
Oh, and by the way, Boehner Bronco Buster?
Yeah.
Where the hell did that come from?
Improv.
Oh, it's wonderful.
If you ask 5 different people what their favorite version of Chris Jericho is, you might get 5 different answers. Lionheart, The Painmaker, Y2J, The Best in the World, or The List. You really can't go wrong. Chris Jericho has reinvented himself time and time again, always adapting, always staying relevant. I personally can't even choose a favorite because Chris Jericho has just given me so many great memories. If I had to choose, I think I'd go with The List of Jericho. 2016, 2017 WWE, it was just a magical time, and a lot of that hinged on the relationship between Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho. I know I'm not alone in wanting to have seen Jericho and Owens literally main event WrestleMania, which just goes to show you how over Jericho was at the time. But what happened? How did the master of reinvention turn into the master of changing the channel? Some might argue that it's simply time catching up with him, that age and the physical toll of the business have slowed him down. While that might be true, it wouldn't be unique to Chris Jericho alone. This is professional wrestling. We have become all too familiar with wrestlers hanging around for way too long. But none of these wrestlers have really garnered the same hate and criticism that Chris Jericho has. Could it be his politics? Jericho is a very outspoken person, and whether you agree with him or not, it's hard to argue that he doesn't usually come across as an idiot. So what is it? Well, I think it's actually pretty simple. The wrestling world is more competitive than ever, and younger, fresher talents are rising through the ranks, forcing even the veterans to adapt or risk becoming completely irrelevant. This isn't just a Chris Jericho thing. Look at WWE just a few years ago. Goldberg, Batista, Triple H, The Undertaker. WWE relied heavily on past their prime wrestlers. Now, when was the last time we saw WWE play on our nostalgia to this extent? Jericho, for all his experience and success, is finding himself in a landscape that no longer needs him in the same way that it once did. Jericho's reinvention, it's no longer about moving the industry forward. It's about just hanging on. And that's where I think a lot of the frustration is coming for a lot of people. Yes, Jericho played a crucial role in the birth of AEW, and for a time, his presence was 100% necessary, He was a legit star power that gave AEW credibility. But now, with AEW standing firmly on its own, loaded with a stacked roster, there is no longer a need for Jericho as such a central figure. And yet he's still at the top of the card, at times overshadowing the very stars that he's supposed to be elevating. It begs the question, how will these later years of Chris Jericho's career affect his overall legacy? 20 years from now, will people be talking about him debuting in WWE and interrupting The Rock, putting Shawn Michaels through the Geritron and the Festival of Friendship? Or will they be talking about this? Chris Jericho's body of work, it's undeniable. From WCW to WWE to AEW, he has given us iconic moments, unforgettable matches, and legendary feuds that have shaped the wrestling world. His ability to reinvent himself time and time again, it's a testament to his genius and longevity in the business. But even for a legend like Jericho, there comes a point where you need to know when to hang it up. Now, I'm not necessarily saying Jericho needs to retire. I mean, who am I to tell a professional wrestler when their time is up? But the reality is, wrestling legacies are fragile. You know, in an industry where one match or one storyline can overshadow decades of greatness, you have to start to ask yourself, is it worth it? For someone like Chris Jericho, who has done and given so much to the industry, it would be a shame if his legacy were remembered more for the moments that, missed the mark than the ones that made him one of the most unique and coolest wrestlers of all time.
What about you? Do you like girls?
I think that I like TV shows.